rulemaking at the federal level in the US can be explained pretty simply. So think of Congress. Congress passing a piece of legislation, sending it on to the president for his or her signature or veto. So say the president signs it. Well, what happens next? The president typically will send that piece of legislation on to the appropriate substantive administrative agency to implement. In the words of the Supreme Court, to quote, fill up the details of incomplete and sometimes vague congressionally passed legislation. So, example, so a piece of highway legislation is passed in Congress, goes to the Department of Transportation to fill in those details. So Congress in the 1940s prescribed the process by which all agencies, not just the Department of Transportation, will write those rules. And the process is pretty simple. First, the agency officials gather the text of what they call a proposed rule. Think of it like a draft paper, if you will. That draft has to be publicized, so all of us, in theory, should know about the text of that draft rule. The agency officials have to have a certain amount of time where anybody that's interested in the draft rule can write a comment, a public letter that says how they should change the draft rule. After the agency officials receive all those public comments, they issue what's called a final rule. And the important thing about the final rule is sort of twofold. One, it's legally binding. It's legally binding just like legislation. And two, while agency officials have to take in those public comments, they don't have to change the draft rule based on the public comments. They just have to take in and consider them.